This man has been trapped on the same day for 1,000 years. Every time he wakes up the next day, the time resets back to 2020 July 7th, 7 a.m. For 1,000 years, he has been living like an emperor daily, no longer worrying about money or women, and even committing crimes for excitement without caring about the consequences, because everything will be reset the next day. As a side note, if you were trapped on the same day, what would you do? Welcome to Chapter Chronicles, subscribe for manga recaps. The story begins with a man named Wu Qin, who, upon realizing that his time resets every day, starts to indulge and enjoy himself recklessly. Today is the 1,000th year that he has been trapped on the same day, and he is in a bar talking to a woman about his story. The woman sneers and tells him that his flirting techniques are outdated. To her, Wu Qin is just a normal man boasting. She pulls out her phone to message her friend, hoping that she will come and take her away from him. Just then, Wu Qin calmly tells the woman that her friend won't be coming. Her boyfriend just came back from a business trip, so she is currently accompanying him. The woman doesn't believe him and thinks that he is just using this as another pickup line. Wu Qin seems to know that she won't believe him and coolly points to the time on the wall. In 9 minutes and 13 seconds, your friend will call you, he says. The woman is stubborn. She stands up and replies, "Let's wait and see then." But as she stands up, she bumps into a man who just walked in. The man looks at her with a sidelong glance, which scared the woman, and loses her composure. The man then grabs her hand and starts making unreasonable demands, asking her to drink with him. The woman is helpless against the man, who is a head taller than her, and just when she is about to be pulled into his arms, Wu Qin lazily interrupts the man with his voice. He gestures to the man to come over and stand next to him. The man, who has never seen someone so arrogant, releases the woman's hand and walks toward Wu Qin. The next moment, the man flicks his cigarette butt at Wu Qin, but Wu Qin, who has gone through this scenario hundreds of thousands of times before, didn't even dodge it. The man, surprised by Wu Qin's quick reaction, decides to attack him with his fists instead. But Wu Qin easily dodges his attack and punches him into the air. In his sleepwear, Wu Qin easily defeats the man, leaving everyone at the scene shocked by his skills. In the next moment, the man's leader appeared. He was very angry that his subordinate was publicly humiliated by Wu Qin. He threatened that Wu Qin would not be able to leave the bar today. But in the next second, the so-called leader was stunned, just because Wu Qin called out his nickname in such a casual manner. Then they heard Wu Qin continue to comment that is this how Zhao Guizi teaches his subordinates. The leader was instantly surprised and wondered who the heck is this man who knew his boss. Wu Qin didn't care about his surprise and took out his phone to dial Zhao Guizi. Although the other party didn't know him, Wu Qin continues talking. When he mentioned the main meeting, the other party suddenly went silent. I thought we can get the chance to admire Wu Qin showing off his skills, but he just made a casual phone call and the problem was solved. After finishing the call with his boss, the leader quickly apologized to Wu Qin on behalf of his subordinates, to which Wu Qin replied that he is in a good mood today, so he will let this matter pass. He is used to people's attitudes towards him now after 1,000 years. But the woman was not calm. She stared at Wu Qin with wide eyes, thinking that this man was so cool. In the next moment, the woman's phone rang and brought her back to reality. It was her best friend who she had been waiting for, and it happened to be after 9 minutes and 13 seconds. Moreover, the reason why her friend couldn't come was that her boyfriend came back from a business trip. Wu Qin had predicted it all correctly, which surprised the woman. Wu Qin waved his hand and walked ahead, saying that if she still didn't believe him, she could follow him. The woman couldn't figure out his thoughts and soon followed Wu Qin to the parking lot. Wu Qin had stolen a car elsewhere since for him, it would be returned the next day either way, and waved goodbye to the woman. The woman is annoyed. He asked her to come over yet leave her alone here, so she demanded Wu Qin send her home. Wu Qin replied that he is not interested in women that only had 8 points with heavy makeup. The woman is triggered. She took out her makeup removal and removed her makeup on the spot, then asked Wu Qin what about this. Wu Qin looked at her closely, smiled, and replied 9 points. Then continue, Do you want to come to my house to prove that I'm lying? Don't worry, I have a huge bed. The woman agreed. The next morning, in a messy room, with the sound of an alarm clock ringing, Wu Chen slowly lifted the covers and revealed his toned 8-pack abs. Another day had begun. But the unexpected happened the next moment. The woman from last night appeared in front of him in a bath towel, holding her phone and taunting Wu Chen. Don't you say that you repeat every morning on July 7th at 7 o'clock? It's now July 8th, 7:01. Explain this to me. This all came so suddenly, and Wu Chen couldn't control his expression for a moment. He suddenly found himself on a new day. Facing the woman's pursuit and questioning, Wu Chen plunged into the bathroom. This is not a dream, time really started to flow, and he has escaped the endless reincarnation. At this moment, Wu Chen was completely excited because he had finally become free. He no longer needs to live the same life every day and experience the same things. The next moment, a voice sounded in his ear, congratulating him for passing the test and activating the space-time reincarnation system. If escaping the endless reincarnation was like a dish of salad, the arrival of this system was like a plate of delicious meat. And the system's panel information appeared in front of him. All his stats were quite normal except for his spiritual power. One option caught the attention of Wu Chen: time reset. Could this allow him to reset time at will and go back to any desired time? The system quickly provided an answer. Indeed, as he thought, but every time he reset, it would deduct a certain amount of space-time credits. And if he chose to reset on the same day, the consumed space-time credits would be doubled. However, this was not a problem for Wu Chen, as long as he did not choose to reset on the same day. He thought about how, although he had been reincarnating for 1,000 years, he had also transformed from an ordinary person into someone with over 1,000 different skills. Now he was no longer passively reincarnating, and his abilities finally had a place to be used. Wu Chen felt excited and could not help but burst out laughing in the bathroom. The woman outside the door heard the laughter and thought Wu Chen had lost his mind. When the bathroom door suddenly opened, she was startled. Wu Chen assured her that he had not lost his mind and that this was the happiest and freest moment he had experienced in 1,000 years. The woman looked at him and said, "Can't you be honest after spending all night together?" Suddenly, there was a loud knocking on the door, and the woman looked through the peephole to see 3 men who were looking for Wu Chen because he had stolen the car of a powerful and influential man named Wang Zhuangyuan. Wang was a legendary figure from the EC region, who had been the top scorer in the imperial examinations. After his parents were injured in a demolition dispute, and he avenged them by killing the attackers, he was imprisoned for 3 years. After his release, he used his outstanding intelligence to create a powerful force in society. Now, he is a man with power and influence in the EC, and most people would not dare to provoke him. The woman heard that the other party was the infamous Wang, and her eyes widened. For Wu Chen, this was nothing. Last night, in order to save the woman, Wu Chen pretended to be the son of Li, a big shot in the entire East region. When the woman heard this, her face became more serious, and she couldn't help but sweat. However, Wu Chen assured her not to worry. The woman was still worried. The people is already here after him. At the next moment, Wu Chen lightly tapped the air and conveyed his request to reset the time for today to the system. In an instant, the woman was frozen in midair, and countless fragments of information about July 8th were gathered. After the reset was completed, the woman is again holding her phone and questioned Wu Chen. This time round, Wu Chen did not panic like before. He really managed to reset time. When the woman was about to speak up again, he put his little finger on her lips and then leaned in front of her. "Hurry up and get dressed, we don't have time." When the woman heard this, she bit Wu Chen's hand and complained that, "Although I know you won't take responsibility, you still have no conscience, chasing me out right in the morning." Wu Chen knew that the woman had misunderstood him because only he had memories before the reset. He then explained what would happen soon and said that his identity is nothing compared to the woman. Upon hearing this, the woman's eyes widened. "You know me. Since you know me, then beg me." How about I help you deal with that top scholar Wang? After speaking, she even ruffles her hair a bit. Wu Chen saw the woman acting so teasingly and chose to pull her in his arms, saying, "Beg? Like how you begged me last night." This move made the woman blush with shyness, but the next moment, she pushed Wu Chen away. "Go dream on. Even if you asked me, I won't help you anymore." However, Wu Chen was not disappointed. His mouth slightly curls up. "Too bad for you. I know someone who can easily handle this matter." The woman did not expect Wu Chen to know such a person and immediately became interested. She eagerly asked who it was, and Wu Chen calmly replied, "She's a woman, a very interesting and fascinating woman." On the street, a group of cars is chasing Wu Chen. Soon, a car caught up with them, and the man waved a black gun at Wu Chen in a threatening manner. The woman saw the gun and got nervous, but Wu Chen appeared relaxed and even said that this is just getting interesting. He signaled to the woman and then sped up the car again. Wang's men didn't give up, but instead shouted louder and threatened to drag Wu Chen out of the car on the way. Wu Chen didn't waste any time. As he sped up, he took out his phone to dial a number. As soon as the other party answered, Wu Chen's voice came through. "Director Li, you have a traitor by your side, and he will make you will lose the bet. Don't worry about the source of the information, and I can tell you more things, such as your younger brother." At that moment, Wang's men caught up with Wu Chen's car and crashed into it. Wu Chen had no choice but to cut short the communication with Director Li on the phone and informed her to meet half an hour later and hang out. Wu Chen's car was sandwiched between the two cars of Wang's men, but he was not worried. He stepped on the accelerator, and a pushing sensation instantly came over them. The red car elegantly and freely swung out from between the two cars. Then, on a fast road, only the taillights of the red car were seen gracefully swaying away. Soon, Wu Chen stopped the car. They have reached the woman's home. She looked at the building outside the window with disbelief, wondering how Wu Chen knew her address. But the woman didn't question further. She knew that even if she asked, she wouldn't get a clear answer. Wu Chen will just use the excuse of 1,000 years again. Afterward, she got off the car unsteadily with her feet trembling. The woman wanted to ask for Wu Chen's phone number to contact him, but Wu Chen didn't wait for her to speak and quickly drove away. The woman's face was filled with anger when she saw this action. She was furious that she had been played all night and didn't even get a phone number. However, she didn't intend to let Wu Chen go. In her opinion, Wu Chen must have been informed about her address and identity by her best friend. The woman immediately decided to fish for information from her best friend to catch Wu Chen. How outstanding can a woman be that Wu Chen, who possesses a space-time system, would give up the contact information of a 9-point beauty and rush towards her anxiously? The woman's name is Li Ruobing, who on the surface appears to be a celebrity entrepreneur in East Sea City, but her background is quite complicated. The young Master Li to whom Wu Chen borrowed the name was her younger brother. Of course, Wu Chen's understanding of this woman also relies on the reincarnation of time and space. Within 1,000 years, Wu Chen not only learned about the woman's information but also had intimate contact with her many times. After bidding farewell to last night's woman, Wu Chen drove alone to the woman's company, which was called Huansai Fashion. With the previous conversation in the car with the woman, Wu Chen easily entered the company. Upon entering the woman's office, Wu Chen didn't start speaking first. Instead, it was Li Ruobing who recited all of his information. Wu Chen, a 22-year-old graduate of the computer science major at East Sea University, with no special family background. Wu Chen was not surprised that Li Ruobing could find out so much about him with just a phone call. Instead, he thought it was only natural. The next moment, Li Ruobing tore up his information. In her opinion, Wu Chen's identity was too ordinary. How could such an ordinary person know about her gambling agreement? Then she stood up abruptly and questioned Wu Chen about who he really was and how he knew so much about her. Wu Chen's lips curled up slightly and said, "You can think of me as an information broker." Li Ruobing's eyebrows unconsciously furrowed at Wu Chen's words, and her eyes gradually showed a sharp edge. Wu Qin didn't give Li Ruobing a chance to continue questioning and instead approached her closely. I know there are many things you care about, and I can provide you with a lot of information about traders and moles. But as a businessman, you need to pay me 10 million as a bargaining chip for the transaction. For Li Ruobing, she felt that Wu Qin is purely provoking her. As he spoke, Li Ruobing unconsciously put her hand under the table. The next moment, she directly pulled out a gun and pressed it against Wu Qin's head. Do you think I will agree to your nonsense? Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you know my information from somewhere. If you don't explain it clearly to me today, don't even think about leaving this place alive. She coldly looked at Wu Qin across. Wu Qin knew that Li Ruobing was definitely not joking, but the next moment, he took the magazine of the gun into his hand. He arrogantly ejected its contents and said, "Let's see how you can kill me without this." Li Ruobing clearly remembered that her gun had been stuck under the table all the time. How could this man take away her magazine? Could it be the probing action at the beginning? Thinking of this, a few drops of sweat unconsciously appeared on Li Ruobing's face. Wu Qin did not answer Li Ruobing's question. He grabbed the gun and said, "I've already told you. I'm an intelligence dealer. Everything in your office is within my intelligence network." After he finished, Wu Qin returned the magazine to the gun and handed it back to Li Ruobing. He continued, "I came here this time not with malicious intentions, but to make a deal with you. As an intelligence dealer, I only care about money." In fact, all of this was just a tactic used by Wu Qin to lower Li Ruobing's psychological defenses. Only by seeking wealth could Li Ruobing be less suspicious of Wu Qin's intentions. Of course, Li Ruobing was also a person who had experienced many. She quickly regained her queen-like demeanor and said, "Tell me, what else do you know?" Seeing that he had reached his goal, Wu Qin played with the gun in his hand. "As the eldest daughter of the Li family, you have been discriminated against because of your gender, but you refuse to accept it. You want to prove to everyone that women are not necessarily inferior to men. However, you have never been able to escape the control of your family. Your mother has always favored you. She came from the Sun family in the northwest and has some say in the family. But this time, instead of stopping you from marrying Ding Ruilong, she even forced you to do so with the threat of death. You wanted to leave, but you were afraid that your mother would be implicated, so you stayed. In order to make your so-called fiancé give up on you, you found 3 fake boyfriends. But you didn't expect that their endings would be one worse than the other. The first one committed suicide, the second was sent to a mental hospital, and the third was worse, he was sent to prison for life. Ding Ruilong is an extremely petty person. Despite knowing that all your previous boyfriends were fake, he still makes the move on them. This made you afraid to interact with anyone of the opposite sex. You are also a very competitive woman. In order to break free from your family's arranged marriage, you made a private bet with Ding Ruilong to see whose company would do better within 5 years. Given your abilities, winning against Ding Ruilong would be no problem at all. However, what you didn't know was that he had turned someone against you in order to win. Now, with only half a month left in the bet, this trader hidden by your side will hand over your research and development materials to Ding Ruilong right before your company's product launch. Your fate is to lose the bet, marry Ding Ruilong, and that's it. At this point, Wu Qin paused and looked at Li Ruobing with interest. Do you still not believe in my intelligence-gathering abilities? After making eye contact with Wu Qin, Li Ruobing silently took out her checkbook and wrote down an amount of 10 million. Then, she handed it over to Wu Qin in a domineering manner and said, "Now tell me, who is the traitor?" Coincidentally, at this moment, the traitor suddenly knocked on the door and walked in. The man's name was Feng Yan, and he was Li Ruobing's senior assistant. He came here this time to get Li Ruobing's signature. As long as she signed the documents, he would have officially completed Ding Ruilong's task. The next moment, Wu Qin pushed the man's head down on the table and pointed the gun at his head. "So, this is the traitor you're looking for," he said. However, Feng Yan did not give in to Wu Qin's threat and pretended to be dumb. "What traitor? I don't understand," he said. Wu Qin did not want to waste too much time on him and immediately revealed that Ding Ruilong had transferred $5 million to Feng Yan's Swiss bank account. Upon hearing this, Feng Yan became even more agitated and began shouting grievances at Li Ruobing. Wu Qin could not help but feel disgusted with such an ungrateful person, pressing him down harder. Continuing, Wu Qin began to search through Feng Yan's pockets. Then he takes out a phone and dials it. After a few rings, a voice that Li Ruobing was extremely familiar with came from the other end of the phone. "Have you got the information?" It was Ding Ruilong. After verification, Wu Qin threw Feng Yan to the ground. "Do you still want to argue or explain now?" Li Ruobing fully believed in Wu Qin now. She stood up and began to question Feng Yan about why he betrayed her. "Is it just because of the money?" Li Ruobing said didn't his family had not earned enough from their Li family over the years. At this point, Feng Yan knew that things had gone out of his control, and it was useless to argue. He started begging for mercy, and claimed that Li Ruobing's mother arranged for him to do this. Wu Qin seemed to know that he would find an excuse to fool Li Ruobing, immediately interrupted and said that he was lying. Li Ruobing's mother agreed to Feng Yan and Ding Ruilong's marriage solely because of Li Ruobing's grandfather's pressure. Feng Yan was instructed by Ding Ruilong to speak like this, knowing that her weak point was her mother. After speaking, Wu Qin passed the gun over to Li Ruobing and asked what she is going to do. However, to his surprise, she did not take any action against Feng Yan. Feng Yan was also surprised that his young lady would let him go so easily and ran out of the door in a hurry. The next second, Li Ruobing explained, "I just don't want to dirty my hands. He will be a rock at the bottom of the river tonight. But now what I'm most curious about is your identity. Why should I believe that you're not sent by Ding Ruilong to replace Feng Yan?" Wu Qin wasn't stopped by this and said confidently, "You can rest assured about this. I have a way to dispel your doubts." Li Ruobing became interested and asked, "What way can make me dispel my doubts?" Wu Qin smiled and looked at Li Ruobing. "Simple, just let me be your boyfriend." In order to prove his innocence, Wu Qin said he could pretend to be her boyfriend because Ding Ruilong cared most about his own face. He would never let himself wear a green hat just to win the bet. Although Wu Qin's words made sense, the next moment, Li Ruobing raised the gun in her hand and pointed it at Wu Qin's forehead. She asked, "I have to admit, you are the most special man I have ever met. If I accidentally finish you off, wouldn't it be a pity? You are not afraid of me?" Wu Qin knew Li Ruobing's motive, play along with her words, and said, "You won't let me enter your office if you really want to finish me off. This is just a joke, so why should I be afraid?" After Wu Qin finished speaking, Li Ruobing remained silent for a moment. Then she smiled and withdrew the gun. "I really like you. Since we are dating now, we should have an intimate photo together." So, Wu Qin and Li Ruobing took an intimate photo on the spot. After taking the photo, Li Ruobing immediately pulled out her phone and told Wu Qin to stay by her side as her assistant in the future. Wu Qin knew that Li Ruobing's purpose in taking the photo was twofold: to discuss Ding Ruilong and to confirm whether he was an undercover agent sent by him. As Li Ruobing was sending the photo, she inquired Wu Qin about her younger brother's situation. Li Gongzi had a deep background in the Black Forces in the EC and was now in charge of the EC Crown, one of the top 3 entertainment clubs in the country. Li Ruobing was not surprised because this information was well known among the people in the EC. However, Wu Qin continued to add that EC Crown had done some things that went beyond the bounds, which involved many higher-ups. Furthermore, an investigation had already been launched 3 months ago. The net would be closed latest in a month. Upon hearing this, the calm and collected Li Ruobing exclaimed. Wu Qin continued to add that this incident was not simply aimed at your younger brother, but at the entire Li family. Li Ruobing, who had gradually calmed down, asked, "Are you sure your information is accurate?" Wu Qin put away his previous playful demeanor and looked at Li Ruobing very seriously, saying, "Don't question me." At this moment, within the EC Crown Entertainment Club, the subordinate is reporting Wu Qin's situation. This man wielding the spiral knife is Wang Zhuangyuan. After listening to the report, he commented that this guy is really bold. While Zhai Guizi wondered how Wu Qin got the information. However, Li Ruotai just wants Wu Qin to be caught and handed over to him, regardless of his identity. The next moment, the sound of high heels tapping on the ground was heard at the door. Everyone turned their heads to look, and it was Li Ruobing. Li Ruotai was like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw Li Ruobing. He instantly got nervous and ordered everyone to stop smoking because Li Ruobing didn't like the smell of smoke. Li Ruobing got straight to the point and introduced Wu Chen. The next moment, Wu Chen threw the car key, saying that he borrowed his car yesterday and was returning it now, parked in the parking lot of Illusion Fashion. Looking at the car key in his hand, the subordinate pointed at Wu Chen in surprise and exclaimed that he was the guy who used Li Gongzi's name to beat him up. Wu Chen didn't care about the shouting and looked at Li Gongzi thinking Li Ruotai is the eldest grandson and the most favored one in the Li family. The reason why Li Ruotai is so afraid of Li Ruobing is mainly that Li Ruobing has been tough since she was young, and whether it was protecting him or bullying him, she would not show mercy. In such an environment, Li Ruotai developed a fear of his sister. Li Ruotai was curious about Wu Chen and points his finger at him, inquiring his sister, "What is this guy's identity?" The next moment, Li Ruobing twisted his ear and said, "What do you mean by this guy, that guy? This is your brother-in-law." Li Ruobing's words left him speechless and shocked. Wang Zhuoyuan and Zhao Guaizi were equally stunned. Li Ruotai covered his ears and trembled as he pointed to Wu Chen and asked, "You said he's my brother-in-law? Even if you want to find a fake boyfriend, can't you find someone more capable? He's too ordinary." Li Ruobing blushed and said, "I'm sorry, I haven't been feeling well lately." Li Ruobing then punched Wu Chen's chest with her little fist, blaming him for being so rude and not listening to her. Wu Chen leaned close to Li Ruobing's ear and asked if she was taking the act too far. Li Ruobing whispered back that, "Are you afraid now?" Wu Chen said no but pointed out that her brother seemed scared as he glanced over at Li Ruotai, who was completely bewildered by his sister's behavior. "What's going on? Are they really going to do it for real? What about Ding Ruilong?" Just as Li Ruotai was stunned by his sister's behavior and wondering about the situation, his mind began to wander. "Is my sister pregnant? Under a spell? Although this guy looks okay, he's not that handsome." Moreover, Li Ruotai knew that his sister liked men with ability, but this guy in front of him was at most in his early 20s. At this point, Li Ruotai began to worry secretly. Could it be that his sister had been deceived? Thinking about this, a picture suddenly appeared in Li Ruotai's mind, with his sister pregnant and abandoned by Wu Chen. Li Ruotai knew that although his sister was very independent, she was completely a love novice and loved blind people. Li Ruotai must not let Wu Chen succeed. With a cold gaze, he asked Wu Chen, "How did you meet my sister?" Wu Chen remained calm, saying that he had met Li Ruobing 3 months ago when she was recruiting interns at a university. Although he said it casually, Li Ruobing was shocked. How did this guy know that she went to East Sea for recruitment 3 months ago? Li Ruotai seized on the 3-month time frame and questioned Li Ruobing whether she really understood this man she had only known for 3 months. Furthermore, Wu Chen had gone home with a girl from a bar yesterday. Wu Chen remained calm and explained that it was a misunderstanding. The woman's name is Mu Qianqian. She is the daughter of Mu Sihai, the owner of the East Sea Mu's biomedical pharmaceutical group. When hearing about this girl, you should thank me, Zhao Guaizi. If I hadn't stopped your men from acting, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Zhao Guaizi was also shocked by Wu Chen's words. Speaking of the East Sea Mu's group, it was not to be trifled with. It is the leading company in East Sea's biomedical industry, and Mu Sihai is also a representative of the National Congress, with multiple connections. Calling them the local boss of the East Sea would not be an exaggeration. Although Li Ruotai was not afraid of the Mu family, it was unnecessary for the two families to fight over such a small mistake. After Wu Qing finished speaking, he thanked Wu Qing and even acknowledged him as his brother-in-law. Li Ruobing was stunned by how his younger brother was won over with just a few words from Wu Qing. Li Ruobing came because she had urgent matters to discuss. Li Ruobing explained that someone wanted to harm the Crown Club. Li Gongzi was shocked, as were Zhao Guai and Wang Zhuangyuan. Li Ruotai immediately refuted it, saying that he had already taken care of everything, and if someone really tried to harm the crown, he would be notified immediately. However, Wu Chen pointed out that Li Ruotai knew what he had done as well as his business dealings with Xie Hu. Li Ruobing was surprised to hear that his younger brother had dealings with Xie Hu, and she was furious. "How come you haven't cut ties with that man yet? I've told you so many times," she said. Wu Chen added that what his sister said was true. Xie Hu was not a good person. This time, the authorities were investigating Li Ruotai because Xie Hu had betrayed him. After Xie Hu got into trouble, he shifted all the blame onto Li Ruotai, leaving him to be the scapegoat. Of all the things, it was the revelation about his business with Xie Hu that shocked Li Ruotai the most. Even Li Ruobing was unaware of this. "Who told you about this?" Li Ruotai demanded, but Wu Chen simply hugged Li Ruobing and said that he was only here today to protect her. Li Ruotai was furious and threatened to keep Wu Chen in the room until he revealed the source of his information. Li Ruobing tried to intervene, but Li Ruotai ignored her and continued to scold Wu Chen. However, Wu Chen simply ignored him and continued to speak about the case. "As for why your Crown Club was targeted, it all started 4 months ago when Liao Bo was deployed to the East Sea, specifically assigned to handle your club's case," said Wu Chen. He didn't want to waste too much time arguing with Li Ruotai, so he picked up a pen and started writing on a piece of A4 paper. "These people are the undercover agents stationed in your club by the police station." In no time, the names of several agents appeared on the paper. Wu Chen handed the list to Li Ruotai and said, "You can check these people if you want." Li Ruotai was obviously surprised by the clarity and specificity of the list. He immediately instructed Zhao Guai to arrange for all the personnel to gather in the lobby on the first floor and for Wang Zhuangyuan to search the rooms of the personnel on the list. Now, Li Ruotai only wanted the result. If he found out that all of this was false, he wouldn't let Wu Chen go so easily. However, Wu Chen remained calm and collected, sitting on the sofa opposite Li Ruotai, waiting for an apology. After smoking 8 cigarettes, Li Ruotai finally got the results he was waiting for. He was now looking at the videos his subordinates had collected, and the more he watched, the more furious he became. His hands started shaking uncontrollably as his face twisted with anger. He smashed the camera in his rage and shouted, "Get them all and bring them here immediately!" Just then, Wu Chen interrupted and told him not to arrest anyone. If any of those people were caught, the police would take action in advance. This would put Li Ruotai in danger, and the evidence in their possession could be used against him. However, this only made Li Ruotai more furious. He couldn't believe that he would just let them go without doing anything. Wu Chen then asked Li Ruotai if he wanted to stay in prison or stay safe. After a brief silence, Li Ruotai asked if Wu Chen had a solution. Wu Chen replied, "Of course. First, make sure your people don't alert the enemy." This time, Li Ruotai didn't argue and signaled to Wang Zhuangyuan. "So, what should we do next?" But this time, instead of answering, Wu Chen looked at Li Ruotai and said, "Now apologize to me." When Wu Chen saw Li Ruotai begging for his help, he knew his chance had come. What Wu Chen needed to do now was to assert his authority and intimidate Li Ruotai, so he would not be looked down upon in the future. Li Ruobing saw that Wu Chen didn't seem to want to help his younger brother and coquettishly asked, "We're all family, just tell us if you have any ideas." Then Wu Chen began to pretend, saying, "Your younger brother doesn't even treat me like a brother-in-law." Li Ruotai was taken aback and remained silent for a while. Then he broke the silence and said, "What are you talking about, brother-in-law? You're my real brother-in-law." In the next moment, Li Ruotai came up to him and sincerely apologized. "I was just worried that my sister was being deceived. Please forgive me." Wu Chen responded, "Okay, for the sake of your sister, I'll give you an idea. What you need to do is turn Xie Hu into someone who can't speak. Only dead people can keep secrets forever. Xie Hu likes to go to Villa 17 with his mistress to abuse drugs. If he dies due to overdosing on drugs, no one will be able to trace it back to you." When Li Ruotai heard this, he immediately agreed. Wu Chen continued with the second point. "Now all the evidence is in the hands of the new deputy director, Liao Bo. As long as the evidence is destroyed, you will not have any problems." Li Ruotai interrupted him and said aggressively, "Got it, I will take care of him." Wu Cheng's attitude suddenly changed and he said, What are you going to do? He is a deputy director. Don't you think your problems are big enough already? As this is a secret mission, there is only one copy of the evidence in the secret safe. Under the master bedroom wardrobe in Unit 501 of Number 3 Alley, Loo Tree Street. The password is 571564. Li Ruotai was completely shocked by how detailed Wu Cheng's information was. Next, the third point requires Li Ruotai to personally inform the head of the Li family because this time, the person who targeted Li Ruotai was their rival family, the Wei family. Wei family is not simple and has been in opposition to the Li family for many years. The two families have even gone to war multiple times. As a result, many people are still in prison. And now that Wei family has caught this chance, they will use it against the Li family. These matters need to be told to the head of the family. Li Ruotai knows that it is not possible to continue hiding this from the family. It is only a matter of time before he tells his own head of the family, and it is still a critical moment. So now there is only one last thing left, which is to set fire to the Crown Club. After Wu Chen finished speaking, he lit the lighter in his hand. This startled Li Ruotai. Wu Chen then continued to explain that he didn't mean to burn the whole crown, just a little fire would do. The main thing is to make use of this as a reasonable opportunity to renovate and rectify, and thus dispel any suspicion of you. If you can do all 4 points that I have said, I promise to help you safely get through this crisis. As soon as Wu Chen finished speaking, Li Ruobing grabbed Li Ruotai's ear and questioned him. Li Ruotai quickly replied that he had heard and promised to follow his brother-in-law's instructions. Just as Li Ruobing released her grip on Li Ruotai's ear, a sudden and urgent ringing of a cell phone shattered the silence in the room. Li Ruotai's demeanor immediately changed upon answering the call. Someone had just won 200 million yuan in his Crown Club. After exchanging a few words, Li Ruotai prepared to head to the main hall, but Wu Chen's voice suddenly sounded again. Was the winner Shen Guangjuan? Li Ruotai was taken aback by the question and asked how Wu Chen knew. At this moment, the Crown Club was brightly lit, and the hall was bustling with the smell of money everywhere. On their way to the hall, Wu Chen told Li Ruotai about Shen Guangjuan, who had arrived yesterday and had hired a big gambler from Macau to come and clear his shame at the Crown Club. The reason why Shen Guangjuan chose to make trouble at the Crown Club was mainly because of Li Ruotai and Xia Hu's business, mainly Li Ruotai, who had brought in gamblers with his connections to fight and control the winnings and losses. Shen Guangjuan was one of those people who had directly lost billions of dollars, causing his company's operation trouble. In order to solve this dilemma, Shen Guangjuan ran to many of his friends, but in the end, he found that many tycoons were in the same situation as him. When he discovered the truth, Shen Guangjuan told Li family's archenemy, Wei family, about these things. Wei family seized this opportunity to launch an investigation, which led to the exposure of your secret videotaping activities. This led to Wei Jia's series of activities against you. Under normal circumstances, Shen Guangjuan would not dare to bring people to target the casino. However, now he was not worried about your revenge at all, because he knew that Wei family was going to take action against you. After hearing this, Li Ruotai was frustrated and he was ready to catch Shen Guangjuan. But Wu Chen stopped him from acting hastily and suggested for him to meet with Shen Guangjuan first. On the other side, and Shen Guangjuan still has no intention of leaving. They are playing Texas Hold'em. The next moment, the gambling master revealed his cards, which was a straight. On the other hand, the poker players at the same table covered their chests and said, "I lost." Shen Guangjuan was excited and opened his hands to gather the chips in his arms, shouting, "Ha ha ha, I'm getting rich." At the next moment, Li Ruotai's voice echoed in the venue, "You are lucky today, Mr. Shen." When Shen Guangjuan saw Li Ruotai walking towards him, he jokingly said, "Mr. Li, you don't mind, do you? But come to think of it, your crown isn't doing well. Even with so many masters here, you still lost to my friend. It seems that your crown doesn't have any talented people." "I'm not so sure about that," replied Wu Chen, whose voice sounded in the venue. He had already come to the gambling table and picked up a deck of cards. The next moment, he threw all the cards high up in the air. As they fell, he grabbed a few cards and then opened his hand, revealing a straight flush. He looked at Shen Guangjuan with a smile and said, "How about playing a couple of rounds with me?" Upon seeing a young man arrive to play with the expert he had brought, Shin Guangjuan laughed and made a joke about Li Ruotai's lack of better options, so he sent Wu Qin, who appeared too young and inexperienced to gift him more money. However, Li Ruotai had not arranged for Wu Qin to play, as he was unaware of his gambling skills, and Li Ruobing knew even less. The two had only met for the first time that day. As soon as Shin Guangjuan's expert sat down with Wu Qin, he began to observe him carefully, since gambling experts often rely on micro-expressions and habitual movements to read their opponents, which takes experience. Seeing Wu Qin's youthful appearance, he assumed he lacked the necessary experience. However, little did he know that Wu Qin was not like other young people, having experienced 1,000 years of reincarnation in a single day and already having mastered the art of gambling to the highest level. After discussing with her younger brother, Li Ruobing rushed toward Wu Qin at lightning speed and asked, "Darling, are you sure you can do this? If not, we can switch to someone else." Wu Qin smiled and joked, "Am I not good enough? I can tell you without exaggeration that I can win in any casino in the world as long as I want to." The game between Wu Qin and the expert began, and he quickly noticed that Wu Qin never looked at the hidden cards. He realized that this could be his habit. In the first round, the opponent folded, and throughout the next 20 rounds, Wu Qin emerged victorious every time. Li Ruotai watched her brother-in-law winning every hand and started taunting Shin Guangjuan. "Mr. Shin, it seems like your player's luck is turning sour." However, Shin Guangjuan remained composed and replied, "Maybe it's Mr. Li's turn to have some good luck." Although Shin Guangjuan lost many rounds in a row, he didn't mind at all because Wu Qin had already fallen into the traps set by them. It was the habit of the expert he invited. By intentionally losing to Wu Qin at the beginning, he could quickly analyze his opponent's psychological state and strike back to win big. In the man's eyes, Li Ruotai had already lost 200 million and couldn't give up now. Once Wu Qin's chips ran low, he would surely add more, and that's when he would reap the most. Meanwhile, the 30th round of the match had officially begun, and Wu Qin placed a bet of 1 million chips. Upon seeing that Wu Qin didn't even look at his own cards and was betting purely on luck, the man chose to follow. After the 4th card was revealed, Wu Qin added another 1,000,000 chips, but the man remained confident as he had AK in his hand and there was AK on the table. If Wu Qin didn't have a pair, the man would win for sure. He then pushed all his chips forward, saying, "If that's the case, I'll follow." On the sidelines, Li Ruotai analyzed the situation at the table. Based on the open cards, his brother-in-law had a higher chance of winning. However, since Wu Qin had not seen his hidden cards, the outcome was still uncertain. At the next moment, Wu Qin picked up his hidden card to look at it, and immediately announced that he would follow. The man raised his glasses and proposed raising the stakes. Wu Qin agreed and requested 200 million chips. Li Ruotai did not intervene and gestured for 2 women to bring the chips. When the chips arrived, Wu Qin stated that he bet 100 million chips and placed his hand on his cards, which the man took notice of. Based on their previous games, the man deduced that Wu Qin only put his hand on the hidden card when he had a strong hand. After weighing his options, the man decided to fold and revealed that he had a king, adding a snarky comment. "Mr. Wu, you're too hasty. If you had bet only 50 million, maybe I would have followed. But now you've missed out on 50 million. After hearing this, Li Ruobing asked Wu Qin curiously, "Was your hidden card an ace?" Wu Qin didn't even hide, picked up his hidden card, and revealed it, saying, "No, it was a 2 of hearts." After seeing the hidden card, the man became furious and slammed the table. "You cheated me." Wu Qin simply shrugged it off and said, "Don't blame me for your own mistakes." But the man quickly regained his composure, thinking that he had observed another habit of Wu Qin's habit. Soon, the 31st round began. On the expert side, the visible cards were Diamond 7, Heart 9, Spade 6, and 3. On Wu Qin's side, he had a Spade 7, Club 6, Club 9, and Heart 3. After looking at his hidden cards, Diamond 9, the expert began to analyze the situation. Both sides had similar visible cards, but the man thought that it was unlikely for Wu Qin's hidden card to be a Spade 9, given the rarity of 4 9s appearing in one game. Furthermore, Wu Qin had not even looked at his own hidden card yet. With his analysis complete, the man signaled to Shen Guangyuan to close the deal and confidently declared, "Let's settle it with one hand. All in. 200 million. Unfazed, Wu Qin nonchalantly responded and pushed his chips forward. "No problem, I'll follow." His move undoubtedly left everyone present in a brief state of shock. Li Ruobing thought it was too risky, while Li Ruotai had planned to follow his sister's lead but decided to believe in his brother-in-law's good luck. After all, no one had any certainty in such matters. On the other hand, Shen Guangyuan saw Wu Chen's move as a bold one that was in line with their intentions. The expert immediately chose to follow suit. After following, he did not forget to mock Wu Chen. "Young people, the most important part of gambling is to stay patient. If you're not being able to control your emotions like that, you won't go far. How do you dare to follow without looking at your hidden card? You think you are the god of gambling?" After saying this, the man directly slammed his hidden card, Square 9, onto the table. "I'll just consider your 200 million as your tuition fee." When Square 9 appeared, two different expressions appeared on the field. Shen Guangyuan was excited, while Li Ruotai and Li Ruobing looked worried. Shen Guangyuan then smirked and looked towards Li Ruotai. "Mr. Li, with your wealth, you shouldn't mind if I take a little more money, should you?" Li Ruotai had no choice but to accept his fate and coldly snorted in resignation. At the next moment, Wu Chen's voice sounded in the field. "You all have said enough. Now you can take a look for yourselves." The expert who was previously composed was now flustered. He knew only someone who was confident in their winning hand could remain calm like Wu Chen. He suddenly reached for Wu Chen's position and noticed that was a spade 9 in his hand. "This is impossible. You never saw the bottom card. How did you know it was a spade 9? Wu Chen's lips curled into a smile and he chuckled. "Did you really think I didn't see my hidden card? I have been keeping my hand on it since the first round. Do you know why? You thought I was nervous, but I was peeking at the bottom card when you weren't paying attention. Your skills are good, but you are too arrogant. Do you really think you can understand my strategy with just a few hands? You're too naive. This was all a trap, and you've been the prey since the beginning." On Li Ruotai's side, he slapped Shen Guangyuan on the shoulder when he saw him silenced. "Mr. Shen, the gambling money you used to smash the place should have been raised from everywhere. Now you have more trouble." Shen Guangyuan's face was full of despair, and he just wanted to leave. As he was about to call his people and leave, Wu Chen stopped them. "Did I tell you to leave?" Shen Guangyuan became unhappy at Wu Chen's interference. "What's going on, Mr. Li? Is this how your Li family treats guests? What's the point of not letting us leave after losing money?" Li Ruotai was also confused about why Wu Chen wouldn't let them go. Wu Chen didn't directly answer Li Ruotai's question. Instead, he asked him if he had a knife on him. Li Ruotai took out a small knife and jokingly asked, "Do you know how to play with it, brother-in-law?" Wu Chen took the knife and flicked it, saying, "What do you think?" He then approached the man brought by Shen Guangyuan with a stern expression. Upon reaching him, Wu Chen grabbed his hand and the man was immediately frightened. Suddenly, a spade fell from the man's sleeve. Li Ruotai was utterly shocked. Someone actually cheated in his own casino. Wu Chen had been aware of the opponent's trick all along and questioned him. "Do you really think no one saw you put that spade in your sleeve on the 15th round?" Wu Chen did not reveal the cheating immediately only because he had not yet won everything over. Upon hearing Wu Chen's explanation, Li Ruotai became angry and asked if Shen Guangyuan was aware of the cheating. Despite the man's attempts to deny the cheating, Wu Chen didn't give him a chance to struggle. He slammed him on the table and pressed his hand down, stating that as an experienced player, the man should know the consequences of cheating. In the next moment, Wu Chen grabbed his knife and struck toward the man's hand. "Losing your hand!" He chopped off the man's hand, as punishment for breaking the rules. Afterward, Wu Chen asked Shen Guangyuan if he had anything to say. Shen, who had never seen such an act before, quickly distanced himself from the responsibility, stating that it was all the man's idea. With the matter resolved, Wu Chen returned the knife to Li Ruotai, asked him to clean up the scene, and advised him not to take action against them in the club. As Wu Chen and Li Ruobing walked out together, she asked if it was exciting and felt good to chop someone's hand off. Wu Chen replied that he didn't feel anything, and Li Ruobing was surprised at how calm he was. She wondered if Wu Chen had killed someone before. After successfully resolving the club incident, Wu Chen parted ways with Li Ruotai and left with Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing was pleasantly surprised by Wu Chen's performance and didn't expect him to be such a skilled gambler. Wu Chen merely replied, "Who would dislike having more skills? Also, don't forget to send me the gratitude fee." As soon as she heard the word money, Li Ruobing's face immediately fell. "Is money all you think about?" she asked, irritated. In the next moment, Wu Chen coldly glanced at the car behind him. Li Ruobing was a little confused by Wu Chen's sudden change in demeanor. Was he angry? As a man, how can he be so petty? Wu Chen calmly lay back in his seat and replied, "I noticed that a car has been following us. The bodyguards in front also received information that someone is tracking them." Li Ruobing was impatient and said, "Just shake them off. Ding Ruilong, that pervert, still likes to send people to track me." However, Wu Chen knew that the people following them were not sent by Ding Ruilong and that they weren't after Li Ruobing. But he chose not to tell her the truth. Instead, he took the opportunity to hold her hand and comfort her. "Don't be afraid, Ruobing. I'll always be by your side." When Wu Chen grabbed her hand, Li Ruobing turned her head thinking, "Is he acting?" But his acting skills were truly impressive, and even almost fooled me. Despite her suspicions, Li Ruobing didn't want to be taken advantage of and withdrew her hand from Wu Chen's grip, adjusting her clothes instead. "You accomplished something big today, so let me treat you to something delicious," she offered. They arrived at a high-end restaurant, which surprised Wu Chen since Li Ruobing is a frequent here and many people here knew her. However, that was her motive, as she explained that she wanted to introduce him to more people. Sure enough, before they could even order, the chairman of Longqing Innovation Group, Han Deli, greeted them. Li Ruobing made no attempt to hide anything and introduced Wu Chen as her boyfriend. Han Deli graciously reached out his hand and they shook hands. However, Han Deli had to leave soon after as he had some urgent matters to attend to. As Li Ruobing was about to share more about Han Deli, Wu Chen interrupted her, saying that he knew more about him than she did. Being an intelligence agent, this wasn't an exaggeration. He then cautioned her. "By the way, not everyone wants to be friends with you." Li Ruobing calmly replied, "Of course, I have many enemies, especially women. But to be her enemy, isn't that a foolish thing to do?" Suddenly, a voice with a hint of sarcasm interrupted them. "Isn't this Miss Li? When did you start hiring toy boys?" The person's name is Lu Caixio, formerly known as Lu Lijuan, a 32-year-old woman who married Lu Guangning, the chairman of Dahai Julie Group, 7 years ago. She has a son with him and also founded Yunxiu Fashion with her husband's support. Speaking of which, this woman is Li Ruobing's business rival. After Lu Caixio's arrival, she started mocking Li Ruobing relentlessly. Li Ruobing was deeply offended by Lu Caixio's insults, but she remained silent out of respect for her husband's position. Despite this, Lu Caixio didn't appreciate it and continued to behave disrespectfully. Li Ruobing had never been humiliated like this before. She picked up the coffee on the table and was about to pour it on her. At that moment, Wu Chen intervened, holding her hand and calming her down. He assured her that he would handle the situation. Wu Chen walked up to Lu Caixio and carefully analyzed her, touching his chin. Lu Caixio frowned and asked, "Why are you staring at me like that?" Wu Chen smiled and said, "You look familiar." Suddenly, he snapped his fingers and exclaimed, "I remember now. You used to work at a nightclub, didn't you?" Lu Caixio was furious and humiliated. "How dare you defame me? Do you even know who I am?" Wu Chen sneered. "Defame? Do you really think changing your appearance can erase your past glory?" Lu Caixio began to panic, wondering how Wu Chen knew about her past working at a nightclub and undergoing plastic surgery, a secret known to almost no one. Wu Chen glanced at Li Ruobing, who was standing up, and said, "This is nothing. I'll give you an even bigger scoop later." Just then, Lu Guangning entered the room, and Lu Caixio threw herself into his arms, recounting Wu Chen's accusations. Lu Guangning comforted her and promised to handle the situation. He then turned his angry gaze toward Wu Chen and demanded to know who he was. "This is my boyfriend, Wu Chen. Li Ruobing calmly replied, refusing to lower her attitude despite Lu Guangning's aggressive behavior. Lu Guangning was not a pushover either. He let go of Lu Caixio and confronted Wu Qin. "You insulted my wife, which is like slapping me in the face. What do you suggest we do?" Wu Qin fearlessly retorted. "I have someone who can resolve this issue." "Resolved it?" exclaimed Lu Guangning. "Do you think just because you're close to Li Ruobing, I can't do anything to you?" Wu Qin shook his head. "I never said the person who would assist me is Li Ruobing, but instead Ma Huifang." Lu Guangning was stunned. "How do you know her?" Li Ruobing did not expect that just a name could cause the man who had ruled the East Sea for many years to change his expression suddenly. Wu Qin ignored Lu Guangnyan's questioning and gestured to him to follow. Lu Guangnian followed Wu Qin to a nearby location with a serious expression. When they arrived, Wu Qin spoke up. "Now I have 2 stories to tell you. The first one is about your wife, Lu Caixio, also known as Lu Lijuan. 10 years ago, Lu Lijuan's man persuaded her to work in a nightclub to make money, where she met a wealthy man. This man had made his fortune through demolition work, but when he was young, he had a dispute with someone and ended up in the hospital. The doctor told him that he might become infertile in the future. As diagnosed by the doctor, the incident left him sterile, and he even failed to conceive through artificial insemination. However, this man revealed accidentally this secret to Lu Lijuan, now known as Lu Caixio, when he was drunk. Therefore, an evil plan was hatched, centered around this man. Lu Lijuan changed her appearance and name to Lu Caixio, and with the help of her man, she became the wealthy man's mistress. She became pregnant within 3 months, giving birth to the boy that Lu Guangnian most wanted. However, the shocking truth was that the child was not Lu Guangnian's but Lu Caixio's man. Even the paternity test was tampered with by them, who paid a high price to bribe the doctor to alter the results. Actually, Lu Guangnian, you should have already suspected that since the child did not resemble you in any way. However, your desire for a child made you ignore it. And that wasn't the end of it. Lu Lijuan's true plan was to kill you in an accident, and then she and her man would take all of your property. Although Lu Guangnian was furious after listening, he still didn't believe Wu Qin. After all, Wu Qin was just an outsider, and it was difficult for Lu Guangnian to believe him with just a few words. Despite Lu Guangnian's mistrust, Wu Qin continued to add that your wife's cousin, who worked in your company, is not really her cousin but her lover, and they often take advantage of your absence to have fun together. Just yesterday afternoon, they went out and enjoyed themselves. To avoid suspicion, they used the stairs. You can check the surveillance footage to confirm. And if you still don't believe me, you can confront your wife by saying. After deciding on his course of action, Lu Guangnian confronted Lu Caixio and followed Wu Qin's advice by first asking about her cousin's whereabouts the previous day and if he had been at the company all day. Lu Caixio initially nodded in agreement with Lu Guangnian. It was at this moment that Lu Guangnian started to cheat her. "I remember your cousin went to see a client yesterday," he said. Lu Caixio was suddenly shocked and quickly changed her story, saying, "It's possible that my cousin remembered it wrong." Seeing Lu Caixio still trying to argue, Lu Guangnian's face immediately turned dark. "Is it? I'll call and ask then," he said. Lu Caixio panicked and resorted to emotional manipulation, questioning Lu Guangnian. "Honey, why are you asking these questions? That guy insulted me and you're not going to do anything about it. Don't you love me and our son?" If she hadn't said the last sentence, it might have been better, but when she mentioned their son, Lu Guangning couldn't take it anymore and slapped her in the face. "You lying woman, how long are you going to deceive me? Get out of here now, I'll deal with you later." Lu Caixio, who was covering her red cheek, fled from the scene. At this moment, Lu Guangning's face was full of gloom. Li Ruobing broke the silence and promised to keep the events of the day a secret. Lu Guangnian was left with a heavy heart, realizing that his desire for a successor had been taken advantage of. At this thought, Lu Guangning clenched his fists, then released and sighed helplessly. "It seems like I won't have a successor in this lifetime." Just then, Wu Qin spoke up again. "Boss Lu, actually you have an excellent son." Lu Guangning was stunned and looked at Wu Qin with an unreadable expression. Wu Qin didn't hesitate and continued. Boss Lu, let me tell you the second story. Once upon a time, a couple who had been childhood friends fell deeply in love, believing they would spend their lives together. However, when the man ventured into the world and became wealthy, he lost himself and heartlessly abandoned the woman for his mistress, taking all their money with him. Unbeknownst to him, the woman was pregnant with his child. As an unmarried, expectant mother, her family disowned her. Despite this, she chose to keep the baby and raise him alone. Due to her hate for the man, she told the child his father had passed away. The child grew into a strong, independent man, starting his own family and even having an adorable granddaughter. Hearing this story, Lu Guangningru couldn't sit still any longer. He urgently asked Wu Chun for the name of his son. Wu Chun revealed that his son's name was Ma Jiawei, bearing his mother's surname. He also revealed that Xiao Feng had lost her trust in men and never married since then. Lu Guangning's face quivered with emotion, regretting his past mistreatment of Xiao Feng. What sins had he committed to treating her like this? She had been living in East Sea all along, aware of his fortune, yet never sought him out. Wu Qin, however, wasn't one to present hope and then snatch it away. He began to search in his shirt pocket. This is the current address of Ma Huifeng's family. It's up to you how you want to make amends and reconcile with your son. Lu Guangning gratefully accepted and promised to treat Wu Qin as a true brother if he succeeded in reconciling with his son. Li Ruobing, watching Lu Guangning's departure, couldn't help but smile. He owes you a great debt, she said to Wu Qin. That evening, Li Ruobing accompanied Wu Qin to his residence. Before he left, she beckoned him closer. Wu Qin was unsure of what Li Ruobing had in mind, but he obliged and leaned on the car window. What's up? He asked. In a sudden move, Li Ruobing pulled Wu Qin into the car and gave him her first kiss. Wu Qin, a man who had been trapped for 1,000 years, blushed at the touch of a woman's lips. Li Ruobing, on the other hand, appeared more at ease. Wu Qin didn't linger in front of the car long before leaving. Meanwhile, in the hallway outside Wu Chen's house, Qian Qian and her friend waited to confront him for not taking responsibility for his actions. Qian Qian hesitated and explained that she had been a willing participant that night. Her friend, however, insisted that Wu Qin was a bad guy who refused to take responsibility. Qian Qian listened to her complaints and couldn't help but remember the previous night when she had mistaken Wu Qin for someone her friend had arranged for her, only to discover later that he had nothing to do with it. As they discussed the situation, Wu Qin appeared at the corner of the hallway, catching their attention. Qian Qian's friend immediately accused him of deceiving Qian Qian, but Wu Qin simply smirked and asked, "If you knew I wasn't a good person, how did you dare to come looking for me?" As he reached into his pocket, her friend pulled out an electric baton, warning him to stay away. Wu Qin just smiled, explaining he was merely retrieving his keys. However, her friend became enraged and attacked him with the baton. Qian Qian urgently shouted for her friend, Li Li, to stop. Wu Qin never looked back and calmly revealed that Hu Xiaowei has been cheating on you with other women. In fact, he returned to the East Sea 4 days ago, but he didn't bother to inform you. He went to see his other girlfriend. The only reason he came to visit you yesterday was to get more money from you after spending too much elsewhere. You're just an ATM machine for Hu Xiaowei. Lily didn't react explosively as one might expect. Instead, her face displayed a look of disbelief. Wu Qin looked at her confidently and suggested, "If you don't believe me, you can call him and ask." Li's eyebrows furrowed with doubt as she replied, "You think I'll just believe you?" But when she finished the call with Hu Xiaowei, her anger couldn't be contained any longer. She stormed off, leaving Qian Qian behind and shouting, "That's Su Xiaowei! He's not home? Just wait and see what I'll do to him." As Li ran away, Wu Qin picked up Qian Qian and invited her to his house. Puzzled, Qian Qian asked, "Why are you hugging me?" Wu Qin teased, "I'm just afraid you'll get tired." Despite Qian Qian's attempts to wriggle free, Wu Qin continued to carry her away. The following morning, Wu Qin awoke with a sigh. He quickly dressed and urged Qian Qian to wake up as well. Hearing his voice, Qian Qian grew irritated, grumbling about his late-night activities and her need for beauty sleep. In response, a crumpled piece of paper was tossed in front of her, and Wu Qin voices saying, "Here's my phone number. If you want to see me in the future, just give me a call instead of waiting outside my house like a fool. Shanqian's face lit up with delight. After leaving the house, Wuchen made a call, asking with frustration, "Why did you have someone follow me all day? I'm going to the gym now. Meet me there." At the gym, Wuchen began his workout. Although he had mastered numerous combat techniques during his 1,000 year of reincarnation, his physical fitness was lacking. Having offended Ding Ruilong, he anticipated potential danger and aimed to improve his physical prowess. Upon completing his combat training, Wuchen was greeted by Wang Zhuangyuan. Seeing him, Wuchen smiled, aware that in his previous life, Wang Zhuangyuan had been a second-rate figure with some notoriety. However, after working for Li Ruotai, his influence had grown rapidly, making him one of the 4 bigwigs of the East Sea and the youngest among them. Together, they dominated the entertainment industry and logistics in the region. Wang Zhuangyuan clarified that he had someone tailing Wuchen, not to monitor him, but to protect him from any trouble Ding Ruilong might cause. Wuchen, however, bluntly asked, "Yesterday, you were following Li Ruobing. Does Li Ruotai know about this? If this matter is revealed to Li Ruotai, do you know the consequences?" After speaking, Wuchen settled on the sofa, displaying his 8-pack abs. Wang Zhuangyuan couldn't help but gulp upon hearing Wuchen's words. Nonetheless, Wuchen continued, reassuring Wang Zhuangyuan that he would not disclose the matter to Li Ruotai. Puzzled, Wang Zhuangyuan wondered why Wuchen had summoned him if he had no intention of telling his boss. As it turned out, Wuchen wanted to befriend Wang Zhuangyuan, hoping that in the future, when he required assistance, Wang Zhuangyuan could provide support through his numerous subordinates. Hearing this, Wang Zhuangyuan's concerns dissolved, as fulfilling such a request was well within his capabilities. Wuchen sought friendship because, although he had a wealth of information, he had no one to rely on for help. Just then, Wuchen received a call from Li Ruobing. Her voice was filled with anxiety, urging him to come to the company immediately. Wang Zhuangyuan, who was with him, promptly offered his car, apologized for his past behavior, and informed Wuchen that there were clothes to change into inside. He also said that the car would belong to Wuchen from now on. Grateful, Wuchen accepted the generous gift. At Li Ruobing's company, a group of business personnel was frantically making phone calls. Judging by the scene, it was evident that they were facing a significant problem. Li Ruobing was not indifferent to the situation, and her expression revealed that the issue was far from trivial. When Wuchen arrived, he saw the commotion and approached Li Ruobing with a serious demeanor, inquiring about the matter. As it turned out, the company's spokesperson, Deng Xuanya, had been in a car accident and could no longer represent the company's new product. Coincidentally, the accident occurred shortly after Wuchen had helped Li Ruobing uncover the traitor, making it apparent that someone had caused the accident intentionally. The culprit was none other than Li Ruobing's pursuer, Ding Ruilong, who had violated the rules of their bet and used his family's influence to interfere. Wuchen remained composed and casually pulled out his phone, suggesting, "Shall I help you find a new spokesperson?" Although it sounded simple, using an ordinary spokesperson for the company's product would inevitably result in substantial losses. The criteria for a spokesperson were incredibly strict. Wuchen scrolled through his phone and showed Li Ruobing a photo of Tao Menying, an award-winning actress who had garnered numerous accolades. He asked if she would be suitable to represent the company's product. However, Li Ruobing appeared disheartened by Wuchen's suggestion. "We don't even have the qualifications to meet her, let alone expect her to endorse our product. I appreciate your willingness to help, but there's no need to exaggerate." Sensing her skepticism, Wuchen proposed a bet. "Let's bet on whether this person, whom you believe you cannot even meet, will appear in your office tomorrow morning and sign a contract to endorse your company's product." This is a joke, right? Others may not know, but Li Ruobing was well aware that Tao Menying was currently filming abroad and had endorsement deals with other cosmetic companies. It seemed impossible for her to endorse their company's product. Wuchen didn't seem to care whether Li Ruobing believed him or not. He just wanted to make a bet. Li Ruobing, wanting to end the conversation, asked, "All right, what's the bet that will make you stop toying with me?" Wuchen promptly proposed the terms of the bet. If he lost, he would give Li Ruobing 20 million yuan unconditionally. However, if he won, Li Robing would owe him 20 million yuan, which would be paid to the person who introduced him to the endorsement deal. He also asked her not to be jealous about it. Li Robing was irritated by this since they were only pretending to be a couple, so why would she be jealous? Wu Qin then requested 20 million yuan to cover his expenses for the plan. Annoyed, Li Robing clenched her fists as she watched Wu Qin leave her office. After departing Li Robing's office, Wu Qin contacted Wang Zhuangyuan for assistance. Following Wu Qin's instructions, Wang Zhuangyuan rented an internet cafe and invited all of his subordinates that are good with gaming to join them. Upon Wu Qin's arrival, Wang Zhuangyuan couldn't help but ask about his plan for causing such a commotion. Without further delay, Wu Qin instructed them to start playing on the Lord of Legend private server. Wu Qin then recharged 100 million game coins, established a gang with his friends, and registered them all under the Overlord faction prefix, taking the name Overlord Faction Qin for himself. After some strategizing in the game, Wu Qin's gang managed to defeat level 120 bull-headed monsters within 4 hours. His friends were astonished as they watched the red-haired boy effortlessly slay the monster and acquire high-quality equipment. Wu Qin observed from a distance as they divided up the spoils, while Wang Zhuangyuan reported they had spent around 8 million yuan on leveling up and purchasing equipment so far. Now, only 2 gangs remained, Wu Qin's gang and the Dragon Slayer gang. Smaller gangs had either joined one of the 2 larger gangs or been eliminated. The time had come for Wu Qin to execute his second move. He used the global broadcast to announce the start of the City Lord battle, with the winner becoming the Lord of the city. Chaos erupted in the main city square as the battle commenced. Wu Qin watched from the city wall when he heard a voice behind him. It was the owner of Tao Manning Company, the target of Wu Qin's plan. The man complimented Wu Qin on his impressive spending in the game, and noted that their gangs were evenly matched. Wu Qin smiled and confidently replied that the outcome of the match would soon be revealed. Curious, the man asked Wu Qin how he planned to win. Wu Qin didn't argue. He simply responded with a knowing smile. The man's theatrical expression vanished in an instant, replaced by bewilderment when Wu Qin responded, "No, you've won." And then Wu Qin instructed his entire gang, the Overlord faction, to remove their equipment and exit the game. One by one, the members of the Overlord faction vanished from the battlefield. The leader of the Dragon Slayer gang, incredulous, cried out, "What the heck? How can you leave when the victory hasn't been decided?" Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded with Wu Qin. "Don't leave, it's so hard to find an opponent. I've already spent 10 million. If you leave like this, it will only benefit the server owner." Wu Qin nearly laughed at the man's desperation, but maintained a look of embarrassment for the sake of his plan. "There's nothing I can do. My girlfriend's company is having some trouble. The spokesperson we agreed on got hit by a car and is in the hospital. We haven't found a new spokesperson yet, so I have to go back and resolve it." Upon hearing Wu Qin's words, the man laughed. "I thought it was a big deal. It's just a female celebrity. I happen to manage several of them. And I'm not boasting, the recently popular Tao Manning is also under my control. I just need to make a phone call, and I can have her come to you." At that moment, Wu Qin knew the man had taken the bait. Wu Qin didn't immediately reveal his true intention. Instead, he pretended urgency, claiming he needed to return to the East Sea right away. The man tried to intercept, but Wu Qin cut him off before he could say anything else. In the bewildered gaze of his opponent, Wu Qin chose to log off the game directly. As he was about to remove his headphones and leave, his phone beeped with a message notification. Opening the message, Wu Qin saw that it was from an unknown number, but the content made the sender's identity clear. It was the man from the game, and he arranged to meet in person. Wu Qin, satisfied with the outcome, quickly replied to the message, acting as though he was in a hurry. He then told Wang Zhuangyuan to have all his subordinates leave, as the matter was settled. As agreed, Wu Qin arrived at the Qin Yuan building. Upon arrival, he immediately recognized the stubbled man before him and introduced himself as Wu Qin, his real name. After the introduction, the man, Lei Qing, asked in surprise, "You know me?" Wu Qin responded casually, "Of course I know you. You're the second young master of the Hongfa Group Lei family. Your reputation precedes you. Lei Qing poured himself a cup of tea and stared at Wu Chen with a cold, stern gaze before asking, "Speak, which family are you from?" Wu Chen showed no fear, sat calmly, and picked up his own cup of tea, replying nonchalantly, "Are you still afraid your brother will kill you?" To understand Lei Cheng's older brother, one must delve into the Hongfa Lei family's background. The Hongfa Group ranks among the top 10 in the country, boasting a production scale of over 6 billion. While their father is the company's chairman, the group is actually managed by Lei Yu, Lei Cheng's brother. However, Lei Yu's biggest issue is the unnecessary trouble he causes whenever his brother interacts with other influential families. Lei Yu has even attempted to kill Lei Qing multiple times and may still be plotting against him. As Lei Qing tightened his grip on the teacup, Wu Chen continued to explain that he didn't belong to any influential family or background and had met Lei Qing purely by chance. Lei Qing refrained from questioning Wu Chen further, knowing that he could easily discover Wu Chen's identity with a little investigation. If Wu Chen had been sent by his brother Lei Yu, Lei Qing was confident that he could make Wu Chen disappear.